Good morning and welcome to Trending. Today we're going to be looking at efforts to overturn the UK Supreme Court ruling on gender. We're going to have a look at an Israeli government official who was caught in a paedophile sting in Las Vegas. And we're also going to be delving into the Stasi-like authoritarianism of Great Britain. So it's all very uplifting for a Tuesday. Welcome to this morning's Trending. Thank you so much for joining us wherever you're watching this, if you're watching on X or if you're listening on Spotify, or of course, if you're watching on iconic.com. You can head over to iconic.com if you're not watching there, and you can subscribe for just £1.99. We've got a bucket load of content, loads of weekly shows, documentaries, films, you name it, we've got it. Okay, so to start, at the minute, see the stories that are kind of really taking up the headlines are Ukraine and, of course, Gaza as well, where they're talking about agreeing to a ceasefire and a hostage release, which is amazing. They're ongoing at the minute, so I'm not going to go into them hugely because obviously the meetings with Zelensky and Trump and Starmer, I think he's just there, do you know what I mean, for the cookies, but not sure how much he's actually getting involved in terms of making decisions, because he just sort of looks like a rabbit in headlights half the time, doesn't he, Starmer? But we'll see where that goes. On the face of it, it looks promising. Anything that stops the killing is, of course, amazing. So hopefully in the next few days, more kind of, facts and concrete plans and stuff will come out. And as always, I'll say it again, I'm not a fan of Trump, but don't trust him, wouldn't trust him to tell me the time in a room full of clocks. But having said that, I want to be proved wrong at all times. Because, peace in the world is a good thing. And I've got kids, we've got skin in the game. Of course, that's what we want. Okay, so first story. UK first trans judge to challenge Supreme Court's landmark gender ruling using European human rights. So this landmark gender ruling, you might remember it. We saw it as a huge victory for sanity, it seemed. At last, the Supreme Court said, yeah, do you know what I mean? Biological sex actually is a thing, which was very good for Keir Starmer. Suddenly he knew what a woman was because he didn't know before they'd ruled. Britain's first transgender judge has lodged an appeal with the European Court of Human Rights against the landmark Supreme Court ruling on the definition of a woman. Imagine needing a ruling. Right. In April, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously that woman and man refer to biological women and men in the context of the Equality Act, and that the concept of sex is binary. Again, like I say, imagine having to have a Supreme Court rule what a woman is and what a man is. They got paid to come up with that. Ms. MacLeod, who left her role as a judge last year, is seeking a review as she claims the Supreme Court refused permission for her to provide evidence on how its clarification of the law would affect trans people. But facts are facts, though, aren't they? Or at least they're meant to be. They're meant to be if you're a judge. The former judge will be represented by Oscar Davis, the UK first openly non-binary barrister. Oh, mate, there's a club. And Olivia Campbell-Cavendish, the founder of the Trans Legal Clinic and the UK's first black trans lawyer. Can I get involved? Can I do the first broadcast with my hand on my head like that? Am I allowed in? What do I win for that? Said it loads of times. Believe what you want, right? I couldn't care less. I don't care what Ms. MacLeod identifies as. It's none of my business. I believe in freedom, absolute freedom. And that means that Ms. MacLeod can believe that they're a woman if they want to. It makes no odds to me. I've got far more pressing things in my own life. There's far more important things in the world going on than what someone identifies as. However, Ms. MacLeod, up until very recently, was a judge. And judges are not meant to deal in feelings. They're meant to deal in facts. Solid, provable facts. Who did it? When they did it, where they did it. Could they have done it? Do you know what I mean? All these sort of things. These are facts. It's not about, I feel like they might have done it today. That's not how it's supposed to work in a court of law. Of course, the injustice system isn't what it's meant to be. Not really, we know that, but that's sort of a different conversation. And I actually think it's fine to believe things that you can't necessarily prove. Because think about it, that's all faith is, isn't it? That's all religion is, really. but feeling something based on a spiritual belief or whatever shouldn't be the grounds to sit there in a court of law and pass judgment on someone and potentially imprison or release someone based on what you feel as opposed to looking at the facts. So that's my concern with this, because obviously, Ms. McLeod is the first transgender judge, but far from the only one because of, the amount of social contagion going on. How much is this going to expand in the future? Probably quite a lot, I would imagine. And when I say it's okay to believe things that aren't true, I'm not just talking about faith, because I can sit here and say, I believe, and I do, that Derby County are the greatest football team in the world, right? But they're not, and I know they're not. They've just conceded 8 goals in 2 games, sat at the bottom of the league. But I can still believe it because there's an emotional attachment to it. And that's fine, don't have a problem with that. But when it comes to a court of law and stuff, it's sort of about dealing in facts. And some things just are, whether you like them or not. I can't fly. I wish I could. Sound like Orville then. I wish I could fly, but I can't. I mean, I can imitate it. I can get into an aeroplane and I can look down above the clouds and stuff and get that part of being able to fly, but it doesn't mean I'm a bird. So that's what concerns me in terms of having a judge, which is now potentially going to overturn this Supreme Court ruling, because it wouldn't surprise me if they did, because, 2 and 2 equals 5 is what the establishment is all about. So when the Supreme Court ruled in favour of a man being a man and a woman being a woman, that kind of took me by surprise, to be honest, because I thought, I didn't think these guys dealt in facts, and they don't normally. But I think if you've got someone who's in a position to make judgments on people that are based on fact, of course, as it's meant to be in a court of law, if that person can look down at their meat and 2 veg and go, yeah, they belong to a female, that kind of, brings it into question for me. And that's not me being mean and bullying. I'm, like I say, identify as what you want, believe what you want. That doesn't bother me. I just think in terms of a position like this, I'm not sure it's particularly wise, really, is it? Maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but that's what I believe anyway. And another part of it as well, and this just dawned on me today when I was reading through this story before coming on. Do you remember during the COVID period, you had something called Biderman's Chart of Coercion? Anyone remember that? It was something that was basically released, I think, by Amnesty International. We're going way back, when they were talking about how, I think it went all the way back into the Second World War, and then pretty much every major conflict from there, where they were looking at what prisoners of war were tortured with, in terms of obviously your physical torture and all that kind of stuff, pulling teeth and nails and these horrendous things, but the psychological ones. And one that they identified was called Biderman's Chart of Coercion. And I remember it because when I saw it, it was during 2020, and I looked through it and I went, oh man, that is COVID. Like that every single part of it was what the government was doing to us, to try and break us and demoralize us and get us to be weak and submissive, which is, of course, what they wanted. And there was a real powerful part of it, I thought, very simple, which is basically if you can get someone to go along with something that they know is not true, they know it's nonsense, but they do it anyway, you kind of kill a little bit of their soul with that. And so with the COVID stuff, walking towards a pub, putting a mask on, sitting down, taking the mask off, drinking 3 or 4 pints of ale with your mates, all chatting and laughing, then needing a wee, standing up, putting a mask on because you had to do that to stand up, walking 5 yards over there, going for a wee with a mask on, coming back down, taking the mask off and carrying on laughing and drinking another pint. That was part of it, because that was nonsense, right? Yeah. I didn't, obviously, but the majority, I would say, did that. They went along with that. So in terms of that, demoralization, yeah. So then when I look at something like this, with a situation where you're meant to believe something that you know is not true, you're meant to go along with something that you know is not true, you're kind of killing your soul a little bit. I think that's probably part of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could ask any kid from the minute they can speak what a woman is and what a man is, and a kid will tell you, well, it's obvious. Yet we're at a point now where you need a Supreme Court to tell you, and not only that, but then they try and overturn it. And like I say, it wouldn't shock me if they did, Right, next story. Here we go. Israeli government, hardly any coverage of this, by the way. Israeli government official arrested in Nevada in internet crimes against children sting. An Israeli government cybersecurity official was reportedly arrested recently by Las Vegas police and other authorities in Nevada who were conducting an undercover investigation aimed at online users seeking to sexually prey on children. Nice people. Tom, if I'm saying this right, Tom Arturum Alexandrovich, it's easy to say, 38, faces felony charges of luring a child with a computer for a sex act alongside several other suspects who were apprehended during this 2-week sting operation. Nevada's Internet Crime Against Children Task Force helmed the operation, which resulted in the arrests of Alexandrovich and 7 other men in the city of Henderson, which is near Las Vegas. All of the suspects believed they were meeting minors when undercover officers instead confronted them and arrested them, police said. Okay, well, that's good then. You've got them, right? You've carried out a 2-week sting operation and you've arrested 8 men that were, I use the term men loosely, that were about to engage in exploitation of children and potentially sexual crimes. Okay, so what's happened? What's happened to him? He's been released and returned to Israel. Oh, probably never to be seen again. Now, he should face, in Nevada, state of Nevada, 10 years in prison. But he works for Netanyahu. So nothing's going to happen. It's mad, isn't it? Where's the outrage? Generally, where's the outrage? But it's not uncommon. That's the crazy thing. This is not uncommon. So you've caught a guy in a sting operation, a 2-week sting operation, where you've caught him bang to rights online, going to meet what he thinks is a child, and he turns up and meets, do you know what I mean, Dave, a 6'5" copper. So what do you do? You release him and send him back to his country of origin. What? The reason I say it's not uncommon, a CBS News investigation has found that many accused American paedophiles flee to Israel, and bringing them to justice once they're in Israel can be very difficult because they refuse to extradite them. It's a good ally, isn't it? Jewish Community Watch, an American organisation that tracks accused paedophiles, has been trying for years to find fled paedophiles and help bring them to justice with very little success. And that's not having a go at Jewish Community Watch. Do you know what I mean? If the country won't extradite, what are you supposed to do about it? It's yet more evidence, though, that paedophilia is rife in politics. It is. Now, you hear about Epstein. Trump and co would rather we stop talking about Epstein, but that is just a part of it. It's a crucial part of it in terms of controlling politicians and media. Of course it is, through compromise. But Epstein is just a little bit of it. Cybersecurity is a major way to do it. Now, Israel's control of cybersecurity, of VPN providers, is huge. They spy on governments all the time. Boris Johnson made a joke about the fact that he'd had a bug left by the Israeli government inside his toilet. Found it funny. Can you imagine if Putin had left one in his toilet? I've just heard that back, how I've said that. Left a bug in his toilet. Could you imagine that? It'd be outrage. It would be a diplomatic incident. But they joke about it. They've hacked the White House regularly in terms of through cybersecurity. That's the best way to get internet. To pose as a security system, which then gets you in the back door, and then you can take whatever you want. It's great for compromat. If you have access to every politician's computer, you don't need to get them on Epstein Island, do you? And this guy, it seems, from what I could find out about him, seems quite a significant player in Israeli cybersecurity. So no wonder they wanted him back. I'm sure he's doing a very good job for him. So moving back to the UK, Sally Rooney. She's a very famous author, novelist, I'm told. Could be arrested under Terrorism Act after pledging royalties to Palestine Action. The Irish novelist Sally Rooney could be arrested under the Terrorism Act after saying she intends to use proceeds from her work to support Palestine Action, which was prescribed as a terrorist organisation in the UK last month. It was prescribed as a terrorist organisation by a lady that regularly receives funding from the Israel lobby and takes trips to Israel. Doesn't say that in the article. I'm adding that bit. I think it's important for context. Meanwhile, number 10 said that supporting the group was an offence under the Terrorism Act after Rooney had made her pledge. Royalties from Rooney's books, including Normal People and Conversations with Friends, I have actually heard of that one, along with the BBC adaptations of them, could be used to support Palestine Action, she wrote in the Irish Times over the weekend. A legal expert also said that the best-selling writer could face prosecution if she were to express her views. Free society. At, say, for example, a UK book festival, underscoring the prescription's gross disproportionality. Of course it's disproportionate. It's ridiculous. So if you put those two stories together then, you can have an alleged paedophile in the United States caught in a sting. He's free to roam the earth, right? Not a problem. Off you go, son. Best of luck. Yet, if you vocalise support for an organisation which is protesting against the genocide being carried out by the employers of said alleged paedophile, you can face terrorism charges. And people talk about two-tier policing. It's mad, isn't it? It is mad, though, isn't it? When you actually sit down and break it down and think about it, that's mad. And also, Palestine Action are not terrorists. They spray painted some aeroplanes, mate. Like, what is terrorism? To me, terrorism is blowing limbs off kids. But that's fine. They're allowed to defend themselves. Spray painting some planes. They don't even belong to the RAF. They don't even belong to the British government. They belong to a hedge fund, which reserves the right to lend those aeroplanes to other countries. And how were they allowed in there anyway? I've asked this, every single one of us that does trending, Jay, Rich, and my dad on Dot Connector, we've asked it on Gareth tonight. I know Rich has mentioned it in Classified as well, but it's worth asking. How were they allowed to get in there? That's the bigger story here. You've got a load of activists, you know, a lot of them in tie-dye and blue air, that are able to get into an RAF base and get access to warplanes. And what do? They spray paint them. Oh, big deal. But how were they allowed in there? Because that's a bigger concern, isn't it? If we're supposed to be frightened of the Russians and the Chinese because they want us, you know, the Russians, they're behind the mass immigration and the boats. They're trying to bring down Britain. Well, lucky it weren't Russians trying to get in the RAF base then, innit? Because I don't think they'd have just spray painted the planes, would they? Or maybe they wouldn't have done anything because they're allowed to borrow them later. Mad. Now, this final story, this is an interesting one, actually. That's not to say that the others weren't. But this is a tweet, and I saw this, if it's called a tweet anymore, is it just a post now on X? By a guy called Jonathan Cook. Now, he's an award-winning journalist. I'm sure there's things that me and him would not see eye to eye on. There's plenty that we would. I'm sure he, from following him for several years, seems very anti-war, very anti-imperialism, which I align with him on. I don't know his stance on COVID and mass immigration, things like that. I don't know, right? But what I do know is that he calls out the state more than most journalists, because let's have it right, most journalists aren't really journalists. They're there, they turn up, they get their briefing by Starmer or Boris Johnson or whoever the puppet is, they take notes on it and they print it as gospel. That's what they do. They're basically glorified secretaries, whereas this guy actually asks some questions. So he's probably not particularly popular within the establishment. And nor should a journalist be popular within the establishment, by the way, because that's the point. They're supposed to ask the questions. They're supposed to ask the difficult questions. Whenever I see a politician whether it be a president in the USA, whether it be a backbencher in the United Kingdom, whatever level they're at, if they're mates with a journalist who's writing stories about them, that ain't right. So this is a post by Jonathan Cook. Can anyone help explain what was going on here? Today, I was driving near High Wycombe, which is not far out of London, really. A Thames Valley police car was behind me for a minute or so. As I came to a complicated set of mini roundabouts, it turned on its blue lights and set off its siren, forcing me to pull over in a dangerous section of the road between the roundabouts. He's given us a lot of facts here, Jonathan, that aren't that relevant, but he's painting a picture in it, and I thank him for that. A policeman came over, bent down by the window, and asked in the chummiest of tones, I'm not going to try and imitate it, are you having a good day? I said I was until he showed up. Good response. He asked if my name was Jonathan Cook. Of course he knows his name is Jonathan Cook because he's looked at the registration plate and he's run it through his system. He then asked what I was doing here. This is Britain. None of your business, copper. Off you go, son. I responded that I was visiting family. Was that a problem? He answered that it was a routine. It was routine to make checks on what he called cross-border activity. What border? He said the car was registered to an address in Bristol. Yeah, that's in England as well. Same as High Wycombe. And that it was a 2.5 hour drive away. It's not. It's 1 hour, 45 minutes. That's sort of not the point, Jonathan, but okay. He added that was a long way to come. I must have looked slightly stunned. He told me not to worry. He wished me well and with a smile said I could continue on my way. Thanks a lot, mate. Have others had a similar experience? Is it now normal to be stopped in the UK simply because you're driving more than 90 minutes from home? Well, it will be, mate. Don't you worry about that. It will be. It's a 1 hour, 45 minute drive from Bristol to 1950s East Germany. That's what I've surmised from this post. What it is it's a basic intimidation tactic. The reason I say East Germany is because this was something that the Stasi did. It's a way of letting someone know we're following you, we're watching you, we've got an eye on you. Now, you've got to be very polite. They can't really pull him over and start being all aggressive, you know, grab him out of the car and slam him over the bonnet, because then people are going to start noticing that. So you're very polite. Like you said, very chummy voice. What are you doing? None of your business, mate. Wait till the 15-minute cities are everywhere. But it won't matter then because you'll be forced to have an electric car. It just won't work. But it is a way, like I say, it's a way of intimidating him. It's a way of saying, we're watching you at all times. We know who you are. Okay, Jonathan, we know you are. We're never that far away from you. So if you want to go for a little drive, see your family. I drove 4.5 hours yesterday. Surprised I didn't get stopped. I'm not as high profile as Jonathan now. Because by telling someone that you're watching them all the time and that you're never that far away, you can stop them anytime you want. What that's doing really is it's a way of politely saying, "Watch your step, mate. Just watch your step. Being very polite on your way. Enjoy your day. Don't worry. It's routine now. So it's routine to stop people that drive 1 hour and 45 minutes from their home. Okay, well, that's interesting. So I look at that and I go, okay, Jonathan Cook generally would be considered probably more of the left. I don't know his political allegiances, but from what he's written over the years, I would imagine he'd probably, if you're going to pigeonhole him, right, you'll pigeonhole him more towards the left, the more old school Stop the War coalition left, right? Okay. So then the opposite of that, I guess, would be the far right, most of which aren't far right. They just get called far right. Now, those would probably be opposing sides. They would probably disagree on quite a lot. But they're still the target. So you will find, as we did during COVID. If you're on your way to protest, you're getting stopped. They want to normalize that. So they'll do that to people on the so-called right as well. So you've got this Tommy Robinson protest down on the 13th of September in London. I guarantee they'll be doing routine checks and stops on people that are maybe heading down to that, or maybe people that are involved in organising that. Just keeping an eye on you, driving quite far away from your home. And it's yet more evidence that actually, even though you've got two so-called opposing sides, that if sat in a pub would probably disagree on a lot of stuff politically, but they're still the target. They're still the target because they're still a threat, sort of in a different way, to the status quo and to the state. And this is why there's been such a concerted effort to have two sides fighting off against each other. So that's why you've got people on the right saying it's the leftists. Look at them. You see it all the time in America at the minute. Even Alex Jones has gone down that road. He used to believe in this shadowy secret government. Now it's just the Democrats. They're the problem. And it's the same here, where people on the right are like, it's Labour, it's Starmer. Oh yeah, because it was amazing under the Tories, wasn't it? And then you've got those on the left often that will be like, the far right are the problem, refugees welcome. Without realising you're both the target and you're both being played. And so things like this might seem like nothing. You're probably thinking, why are you covering a tweet? Well, I think it's quite important. That's mad. That you drive an hour and 45 minutes from your home to visit your family getting stopped by the police. You got no right to stop me. What are you talking about? But it will become normalised. Absolutely it will. And it'll be for your safety and your benefit. We just want to keep an eye on you. Just want to make sure you're okay. Can you show me the papers? Where's your digital ID card? It's mad how much Britain is falling into this authoritarian trapdoor. And it's mad how many people are cheering it on. What needs to happen is people like Jonathan and supporters of him, and people that would be considered far right despite not really being far right. They need to accept that they disagree on certain things and they disagree politically, and that's fine. That's fine. And it used to be fine to disagree with stuff. Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think that's ridiculous. Anyway, what are you having? Yeah, I'll have half a lager. I don't think I've ever ordered half a lager in my life. But you get my point, right? But instead, they don't. So when it comes to mass immigration and these hotels that are full of these fighting age men that are, some of them, going out and abusing people, raping people, and then you have protests there, understandably, and then you have counter-protests. For what? Because you can have political differences but still believe that, okay, this is bad. There's guys in this hotel that are abusing people in the local community. There's no tribalism needed there. It's just wrong. And so you can join forces against certain things. But no one does, because it's all this tribal nonsense. It's how Israel gets away with so much in terms of public opinion in this country, although it is massively struggling with that, particularly on the right, because they go, I don't like mass immigration, I don't like Muslims, therefore I support Israel. Okay. Well, who was pushing for most of, if not all of these wars in Iraq and in Syria and Afghanistan that led to a large proportion of that mass immigration? It's a question worth asking, isn't it? Anyway, thank you so much for watching. My brother's back tomorrow, I think with Richard Willett, or it may be one of them on their own. I've been away, so it shows how up to speed I am, but I'm pretty sure it's Jamie and Richard tomorrow. Thank you, as always, for tuning in, wherever you're watching. If you're not watching Iconic on iconic.com, you can head over there now and you can subscribe for $1.99. Like I said at the top of the show, loads of documentaries, weekly shows, and feature films. And obviously we're producing more all the time. There's lots of new content in the wings, some of it really exciting, some stuff that personally I'm involved with that I think you hopefully really, really enjoy. So it's definitely worth it. $1.99, go and have a look. Thousands of hours worth of content. And like I say, either Jay or Rich, or Jay and Rich, will be back tomorrow, and I'll see you on Thursday. Till then, take care of yourselves. Bye.